What are the engineerings for carbon flow through the soil? Gosh, I don't know what they would be. That again, you could measure it as respiration, which is just I don't know what the units are in respiration. Grams per. It's probably based on a volume. So you've got grams of CO2 per cubic centimeter or something like that. So it's amount of CO2 per volume of soil. That's one way to get at it. Active carbons, looking at before the flow actually happens, what is the carbon pool that's most likely to be decayed rapidly? And there it's just like your organic matter. It's a mass per mass of soil. Let's see here. What was the first carbon input Andrew discussed? I think that was the planting green. So it was live plants. Yeah, planting. Somebody already answered that.
Deanne had a kind of a question.
Go ahead.
Comment. Rather than sea flow, aren't you really meaning microbial biomass and activity?
Well, one is the result of the other. The microbial biomass and activity is the result of that carbon energy flow through the soil. So it's kind of like your pickup truck. You want it to function, but as soon as you run out of that carbon energy, which is exactly what diesel is, it's a little bit different form, but it's carbon energy. As soon as you run out of that diesel or gasoline, the function stops. So you need one to kind of fuel the other. Comment on humic acid. That's a good question. Humic acid is always a question I get, and it's not one that it's easily answered. It seems like there are different types of humic acid, that some that work and some that get inconsistent results. And I'm not an expert on humic acid. We had a speaker at one of our conferences a few years ago who was, and I can't remember the difference that he made but there was a difference in humic acids. So again, the results have been inconsistent that I've seen. So just in case, would refer to offering crops some resilience in terms of extreme weather events. Yes, I would say so, especially if you're talking extreme weather events, when the crop's going to be stressed because it's, you're planting a tropical crop like corn in a cool soil at a northerly latitude, I would say yes. The corn probably thinks that spring in Nebraska is a extreme weather event, because we tried to plant it so early. We do it here too, and we're further north than you guys are. Back there, in a lot of cases, there's probably people farther north than I am here. Any research done on P plus carbon, phosphorus plus carbon? I did see some, and I know there's products out there that are adding carbon to the phosphorus, but I didn't see, I should say I've seen the products, I have not seen the research. But again, that makes sense to me, especially when you're not getting that turnover in the soil from organic matter. I've not worked with compost tea. That's not what I'm really talking about here. Compost tea is usually, it's not heavy on carbon. It's mostly, as far as I understand it, aimed at adding organisms to the soil and not so much the carbon. Yeah, do you have to pay attention to the seed end ratio? Yes, and that's what I was talking about. We don't know how much flow is necessary, and if you put too much carbon in without nitrogen, you're going to tie up carbon in the soil. So there again, you have to worry about putting too much carbon in the soil at one time. The impact of biochar. Biochar is fairly stable carbon, so it's really not what I'm talking about here. That would be adding to your warehouse of stored soil organic matter or carbon. And biochar, I think it's a great product if you can afford it at the effective rate. If you're looking at biochar, I tell people to ask two questions. You need to ask, how much do I need to put on, and how much is it going to cost me to get the benefits? because there's always, in the research, there's always an effective rate. And if you don't get that effective rate, then you're probably wasting your money, but you may not be able to afford that effective rate. The dual purposes of just-in-time carbon with long-term carbon storage. Can we do both well, or are there trade-offs? Well, as I mentioned before, depending on where your soils are, that building that storage pool can become more and more expensive, more and more difficult to do. Again, depending on where you are. In our soils, we have hot summers, lots of irrigation water. We grow crops like potatoes, onions, carrots, where you actually have a major tillage operation at harvest. So it's difficult to build up that long-term storage. So just-in-time soil health would help us if it turns out to be a doable thing. So there are trade-offs, I would say, depending on where you are and what your soils are and what your cropping system is. Just-in-time. Should this be just-in-time soil health or just-in-time biological activity? Either one would work, I would say. I mean, when I'm talking about soil health, I'm talking about the biological activity that leads to the results that we want from your soil biology. And there, you're right that soil health is the effects of our inputs would be transient, but then you depend on the crop itself. The soil organic matter, as the soil warms up, is going to provide that flow. Isn't the pool critical, especially as we all face more extreme events? Again, that's getting back to, there are benefits that are just specific to that pool. And so building it up as much as you can, especially for rain-fed agriculture, is very important, just to capture water. So yes,